I want to look at the whole issue of phrases today. In English, if we have phrase A, then B, then C, phrase C is connected to phrase B for the most part. B is connected to A. But Greek doesn't work that way. You can have phrase A, B, and C is actually connected back to A. Well, that makes for a really interesting challenge in translation because you don't want to misinterpret or lead someone astray as to the meaning of the passage. So let's take a look at Romans 8, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Romans 8:20, it's a little complicated in the Greek, but that's okay. It's for in futility, in frustration, against its will, various ways in which you can translate that. Creation was subjected. And then we have the next phrase, not willingly, not of its own choosing, but on account of or through the, and here's a participle that is being used substantively for God, the one who subjected it. And then you have this phrase, in hope. And continuing down to verse 21, that also creation itself will be set free from the bondage of decay. But what I want to get back to is this F elpida. What does it go to? Well, here's where it gets interesting because the question is, does the prepositional phrase modify what precedes it, or does it pick up from an earlier phrase and modify what follows it? Okay, let's take a look again. So you have creation was subjected into futility, not willingly, but on account of the one who subjected it. Now, did he subject it in hope, or was creation subjected in the hope that creation itself will be set free? In other words, does F helpida go with the preceding or the following? And how parenthetical is that phrase? So let's take a look at the phrasing because I think it will really help. So it's for creation was subjected in futility, and it was subjected not of its own will, but on account of the one who subjected it. And I think what you'll find is that most translations think that creation was subjected in the hope that creation itself would be set free. In other words, the prepositional phrase goes with what follows, and it picks up from hupotage, not from the participle down here. See how it works? That's what the arrows are all about. Let's take a look at how the translations handle it. Here the NASB is just going to use commas. For creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Okay, that's about as vanilla as you can get. And the comma at least separates the prepositional phrase from the participle. That's helpful. The ESV does the same basic thing. Interestingly, the NRSV leaves out a comma, which really helps, I think. For the creation was subjected to futility, comma, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, comma, in hope that. In other words, they're saying this is a parenthetical phrase, and by not putting a couple of commas in it, it keeps it together so you can go from subjected to futility and have it pick right up with in hope. That's more helpful. But the CSB does something that I think is even more helpful, and so does the Net Bible. It uses dashes. For the creation was subjected to futility, and it makes it really clear that from futility, the thought is in the hope that the creation itself will be set free. You can see here in the net that that's what they're doing as well. So again, let me emphasize that phrases don't always follow sequentially in Greek. And here you have a good example of you have a couple of phrases that are parenthetical, and you have to make a decision, at least if you want it to be real understandable, of does the prepositional phrase go with the preceding or the following. And I think that using the dash in this case, and translators tend to not like dashes. They're hard to read. They're not a good translation technique unless you just have to have it. And here certainly, I think they had to have it.